The unexpected recruit. The sterile white corridors of the Quantum Dynamics Research Center hummed with an electric anticipation. Dr. Nolan Rice hunched over his workstation, fingers dancing across holographic displays that flickered with complex mathematical equations. Outside the reinforced windows, the early morning Los Angeles skyline began to shimmer with dawn's first light. Nolan's latest project was pushing the boundaries of quantum communication, a theoretical framework that could revolutionize interstellar communication. Most of his colleagues considered it impossible, a pipe dream of a brilliant but eccentric scientist. But Nolan knew better. The universe was more connected than anyone could imagine. A sudden interruption shattered his concentration. The lab's security systems went haywire, screens flickering, alarms silenced before they could fully sound. Nolan's hand instinctively reached for the emergency shutdown switch, but something stopped him. The interference was unlike anything he'd ever seen. "Interesting," he muttered, adjusting his neural interface headset. The air in front of him began to shimmer, distorting like heat rising from desert sands. Nolan stood perfectly still, heart racing but mind impossibly calm. Years of theoretical research had prepared him for unexpected phenomena, though nothing could truly prepare someone for what happened next. A figure materialized, humanoid but decidedly not human. Standing nearly 7 feet tall, the being wore what appeared to be a living computational suit that shifted and changed with each micro-movement. Its skin, if it could be called that, was a complex matrix of iridescent geometric patterns that seemed to calculate and recalculate with each passing second. Dr. Nolan Rice, the being spoke, its voice neither male nor female, but a complex harmonic that seemed to bypass Nolan's ears and resonate directly within his mind. "We require your specific intellectual capabilities." Nolan raised an eyebrow. After years of being told his research was too radical, too impossible, he found himself amused by this direct approach. "And who exactly is we?" he asked, maintaining a professional tone despite the extraordinary circumstances. The being, which Nolan's scientific mind was already categorizing and analyzing, tilted its head in a gesture that seemed almost human. "We are the Quantum Collective. Your recent work on nonlinear quantum communication has attracted our attention. More precisely, it has alarmed certain interstellar diplomatic networks." A holographic display erupted between them, showing complex mathematical models that made Nolan's earlier work look like elementary school arithmetic. Equations danced and transformed, showing potential communication pathways that defied everything humanity currently understood about physics. "You've been tracking my research?" Nolan asked, more intrigued than concerned. "Tracking, analyzing, evaluating," the being responded. "Humanity stands at a critical juncture. Your theoretical work could either prevent or precipitate a massive interstellar conflict." Nolan understood immediately. His quantum communication research wasn't just about sending messages faster than light. It was about creating communication networks that could potentially translate between fundamentally different species, different ways of thinking. A universal translator that went beyond language, reaching into the very fabric of cognitive communication. "And you want me to what?" Nolan asked, crossing his arms. "Join some intergalactic research team. Develop communication technologies." The being's geometric patterns pulsed, what Nolan would later recognize as its version of a smile. "We want you to prevent a war. Your unique human perspective, your ability to think nonlinearly, to make intuitive leaps, is precisely what makes you valuable." At that moment, Nolan realized his life would never be the same. His decades of being considered an outsider, a scientist too radical for mainstream research, had prepared him for this moment. The universe had been waiting, and now it was calling. "When do we start?" he asked. The being's response was instantaneous. The lab around them began to dissolve, quantum particles rearranging themselves. Nolan felt no fear, only an overwhelming sense of purpose and the thrilling anticipation of the unknown. Humanity's first true interstellar diplomatic mission was about to begin, and Dr. Nolan Rice was at its center. Technological catalyst. The research facility materialized around Nolan, if facility was the right word. Gone were the familiar white walls and digital displays of his Earth-based laboratory. Instead, he found himself in a vast chamber that seemed to breathe and pulse with living technology. Geometric structures shifted and realigned, creating and dissolving workspaces with impossible fluidity. His alien contact, whom he'd mentally dubbed the Geometer, due to its ever-changing geometric skin patterns, stood nearby, observing Nolan's reaction with what seemed like clinical curiosity. "Your first challenge," the Geometer announced, "is to understand before you can create." A holographic display erupted around Nolan, showing complex communication networks that looked like intricate neural pathways. Star systems were represented as interconnected nodes, with cascading lines of probability and potential communication streams. "These are the current interstellar communication networks," the being explained. "Primitive, rigid, prone to misunderstandings that have led to centuries of conflict." Nolan's scientific mind was already racing. He recognized underlying patterns that suggested massive inefficiencies in how different species communicated. Translation wasn't just about converting words. It was about bridging entirely different cognitive frameworks. "You want me to redesign this entire system," Nolan stated, more than asked. The Geometer's patterns shifted, a gesture of affirmation. "Humanity's greatest strength is adaptability. Your species sees communication as fluid, contextual. Most galactic civilizations view communication as a fixed, mathematical process. For the next several weeks, or what passed for weeks in this timeless research environment, Nolan worked relentlessly. The living technology responded to his thoughts, creating and dissolving experimental communication models faster than any computer he'd ever imagined. His breakthrough came from an unexpected place. While analyzing communication patterns, Nolan realized that human empathy, the ability to understand context beyond literal meaning, was the key. Most advanced civilizations rely on precise mathematical translations. Humans, by contrast, understood nuance, interpreted emotion, read between the lines. "It's not just about translating words," Nolan explained to the Geometer during one of their many discussions. "It's about translating intent, emotion, cultural context." The holographic displays began to transform. Where previous models showed rigid, linear communication pathways, Nolan's new design resembled a living, breathing ecosystem. Communication nodes could adapt, shift, reinterpret based on contextual understanding. The Geometer's response was unprecedented. Its geometric patterns erupted in what Nolan could only interpret as excitement. "You are creating a quantum empathy matrix," it said, "something no civilization has achieved." But Nolan knew the real test was yet to come. Theoretical brilliance meant nothing without practical application, and the universe was about to present its most challenging test. Interstellar negotiations. The communication chamber transformed, walls becoming transparent to reveal a vast council space. Representatives from multiple alien civilizations materialized, each more bizarre and incomprehensible than the last. Some appeared as networks of light, others as crystalline structures that shifted and communicated through complex geometric resonances. Nolan stood at the center, his quantum empathy matrix projected as a living holographic network. The Geometer stood beside him, acting as both translator and advocate. "The human proposal challenges everything we understand about interspecies communication," announced a being composed of what looked like interconnected plasma streams. Its voice was a series of mathematical equations that the chamber's systems translated into sound. Another delegate, a massive entity that seemed constructed from living mathematical equations, challenged Nolan directly. "Your species has barely achieved sustainable space travel. How can you propose to revolutionize our communication systems?" Nolan smiled. "Humans had always been underestimated, because we understand something most advanced civilizations forget. Communication is more than information transfer. It's about connection." He activated the empathy matrix. The holographic display began to pulse, showing not just communication pathways, but the emotional and contextual layers beneath each interaction. Misunderstandings that had led to centuries of conflict were suddenly laid bare, revealed not as intentional hostilities, but as fundamental misinterpretations. A delegate from a silicon-based civilization challenged him. Emotion is inefficient. Pure data transfer is superior. Emotion is the bridge between data and understanding, Nolan countered. Your conflicts arise not from lack of information, but from lack of empathy. The chamber fell silent. The quantum empathy matrix continued to pulse, showing potential communication scenarios, where previous models showed binary outcomes, conflict or stalemate. Nolan's design revealed nuanced pathways of mutual understanding. The geometer's geometric patterns shifted in what Nolan had come to recognize as profound approval. The human demonstrates a fundamental truth about communication, it announced. It is not about perfect translation, but about creating understanding. Political tensions that had simmered for generations began to dissolve. The empathy matrix showed not just potential communication, but potential cooperation. Species that had been locked in Cold War-like standoffs for centuries suddenly saw each other not as threats, but as potential partners. But Nolan knew this was just the beginning. The real challenge was yet to come, implementing this radical new approach across diverse and often hostile civilizations. As the council deliberations continued, he caught the geometer's eye. A silent understanding passed between them. Humanity had just changed the course of galactic diplomacy, and no one had fired a single weapon. The quantum gambit, the fragile diplomatic peace established by Nolan's empathy matrix, was about to face its most severe test. A coalition of technologically advanced civilizations, threatened by the potential of human innovation, had decided to neutralize the perceived threat. Deep in an uncharted sector of the galaxy, a massive fleet assembled. Warships from 6 different star systems, each representing technology centuries beyond human capabilities, converged with a single purpose: to eliminate the source of the quantum communication breakthrough. Nolan received the warning from the geometer just hours before the attack. They fear what they cannot control, the being explained, its geometric patterns flickering with tension. Your empathy matrix has exposed the fundamental weaknesses in their communication and power structures. The research facility, a living, adaptive space that had become Nolan's home, began to reconfigure. Defensive systems that Nolan hadn't even known existed started to activate, transforming the research center into a potential fortress. We're not going to fight, Nolan stated firmly. That's exactly what they expect. The geometer's patterns shifted in what could only be interpreted as curiosity. Then what is your plan? Nolan's fingers danced across holographic interfaces, pulling together the quantum empathy matrix in its most comprehensive form yet. We're going to communicate, he said, a smile spreading across his face. As the first wave of alien warships entered sensor range, Nolan activated the matrix. Instead of defensive weapons or shields, the research facility began to broadcast, not a message, but a complex web of emotional and contextual understanding. The incoming ships found themselves experiencing something unprecedented. The quantum empathy matrix didn't just translate, it made them feel. Each ship's crew began to experience the motivations, fears, and hopes of the others. The aggressive intent began to dissolve, replaced by a profound sense of shared understanding. Decades of accumulated hatred, fear, and misunderstanding began to unravel. Ships that moments ago were prepared to destroy each other now found themselves in a complex dialogue that transcended language, technology, or physical form. Impossible, the geometer whispered, its geometric patterns pulsing with what could only be described as awe. Nolan watched as the massive fleet, capable of obliterating entire star systems, simply stopped, not through force, not through threat, but through understanding. Humans have always been storytellers, Nolan explained. Our greatest weapon has never been technology, but our ability to create connections, to understand, to empathize. The quantum gambit had worked. Humanity had just rewritten the rules of galactic conflict, not with weapons, but with understanding. Humanity's horizon. 5 years had passed since the quantum gambit that transformed galactic diplomacy. The research facility, no longer just a scientific outpost, but now a symbol of interstellar cooperation, orbited a specially designated neutral zone where representatives from thousands of civilizations regularly convened. Nolan stood at the observation deck, watching a delegation of silicon-based lifeforms communicate with a group of energy-based entities. What once would have been an impossibly complex negotiation now flowed with remarkable ease, thanks to the quantum empathy matrix. The geometer approached, its geometric patterns now a familiar sight. "You've changed everything," it said. A statement, not a question. Nolan chuckled. "We just helped everyone remember what they'd forgotten." Communication isn't about proving who's right. It's about understanding. A young researcher interrupted their moment of reflection. "Dr. Rice, we've detected a new civilization on the outer rim. Their communication patterns are completely unique. They might challenge everything we've developed." Instead of concern, Nolan felt excitement. "Perfect," he responded. "That's exactly what we need." The quantum empathy matrix had become more than a technology. It was a living, evolving system of understanding, a testament to human creativity and compassion. Where other civilizations saw new species as potential threats, humans saw potential connections. As if to emphasize the point, the research facility itself seemed to pulse with anticipation. Living technology that had been adapted from multiple civilizations now bore the unmistakable mark of human innovation. Adaptable, curious, hopeful. "We're going to make first contact," Nolan announced to the geometer. "And this time, we're going to do it right." The being's geometric patterns shifted in what could only be described as a smile. Humanity had done more than survive among the stars. They had learned to truly connect. A transmission came through. The first signals from the newly discovered civilization, where previous first contacts might have been fraught with misunderstanding and fear, now there was only curiosity. Nolan looked out at the vast expanse of space, seeing not emptiness, but potential. Humanity's greatest journey was just beginning. "Ready to make history?" he asked the geometer. The universe, it seemed, was listening.